Hey, this is Johnny Jet. This is my 39 travel questions series on YouTube, on my podcast. So please subscribe to both if you're not already. And today we have my good buddy, Doug Lansky, who I met, I don't know, over a decade ago, maybe even two, at a travel conference. I think it was the LA Times travel show. And Doug grew up in Minnesota. And I remember going up to you saying, hey, you're from Minneapolis. Do you know my buddy such and such? And you're like, kind of laughed. You're like, before I even said his name, you're like, how many people are in Minnesota? And then I said his name. You're like, I do know him.
Yeah. Dolan.
John Dolan. You got it.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. I mean, so anyway.
And then
Doug's
we share
a really
something
cool
else
guy.
in common.
What's that?
We share something big in common, don't we? Don't we have the same birthday?
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to bring up. We do have the same
sorry.
birthday. So automatically, Doug is a great guy. And so Doug, welcome. So where did you grow up in Minnesota?
Yeah, I was in Minnetonka, sort of suburbs of Minneapolis, little well-to-do, not quite silver spoon in your mouth, more like a silver cheap sailboat on the lake.
And where do you live now?
Now I live in the suburbs of Stockholm. So I'm coming to you from Sweden. I've been living here for 18 years. Been bouncing around before that. I was in Norway for a couple of years. Before that, I lived in Spain, France, the Netherlands, had a little stint there, had a stint in India and Brazil for a couple months.
Wow. I mean, coming from Minneapolis or Minnesota,
yeah.
I assume you're Scandinavian? Is that why you chose Norway and Sweden?
I really wanted to get my IKEA packages delivered quicker. I wanted to go to the headwaters of the Scandinavian DNA pool. No, I didn't have any Swedish relatives. I had to make my own.
Wow. So you married a Swede. Yep. You have 2 kids.
3.
And what's it? 3? You have 3 kids?
Yeah, 3 teenage girls. I'm trying to do that emoji.
I'm sorry. And I've been to your house in Sweden.
Yeah.
Awesome place.
We didn't let you meet
the
all
whole
the
setup.
kids.
Sweden is an amazing country. And by the way, speaking of Sweden, right now, this is August 2020 here. We're in a full-on pandemic, coronavirus. Hopefully you're watching this a few months from now and you're like, man, they had a bad pandemic then. So what's going on? I know people are talking about herd immunity. Is it really herd immunity there?
Well, we don't know because they don't have a great test for this thing called the T cells. They know there have been people who they tested positive for the virus, who then got better, and then didn't have antibodies. And so they had other kinds of immunity. And so they're thinking this is a T cell immunity. I got it really early. I was in the Alps when all this went down in northern Italy in the Alps. And I was actually just on the other side of the tunnel of Mont Blanc in Chamonix skiing with some neighbors. And we all came back with it. We were sitting in the sauna. This couple from England comes in and they're like, we're on our honeymoon. We just came from Italy, and they closed the border behind us. And then they went like this.
No.
In the sauna. And we all just looked at each other and were like, okay, we're screwed, whatever.
So that's where you guys got it, in that sauna.
Maybe. I mean, we didn't care. We were young and fit. You know how young we are.
And
no, but we didn't.
How bad was it?
It was that bad. And it wasn't. I mean, it was like for me, it was like having the flu for 2 days. And then I got better for 3 days, went out jogging. And then the cough set in for about 5 days. And that was the only really bad part. But the flu part, I just took, Tylenol and aspirin stuff. And I kept the fever down, and I slept most of the time and watched bad TV, and I was fine. But the coughing part, by that point, I'd realized probably had corona. So I kicked everyone out of the house, and I was there alone, and I'd wake up at 3 a.m. coughing, and I'd thinking, okay, if I go back to sleep and this gets worse, what if I can't even speak or make a phone call? What am I going to do then? Or when do I go to the hospital? I was always totally fine, but I just wondered if it was going to get really bad.
Right.
And it never did.
That's good.
So
How about your friends who got it?
They had it less than I did. Like
Even
they
better.
just kind of had like a day of kind of feeling off.
So do you know anyone that got it really bad there?
Yeah, actually, this is what's really interesting. So my neighbor that's like really like 20 yards that way, he got it pretty bad. He's like 60, I don't know, my window's open, I gotta be quiet. He's like 60, 65, little overweight-ish, and has some pre-existing conditions.
Okay.
And he didn't end up even going to the hospital, but he almost went.
Wow.
Now, the neighbors on that side, 20 yards that way, there's two different guys there. One from France, actually, and the other guy's from Rwanda, works for Doctors Without Borders. They both got it. No big deal. Fine. My other neighbor, like 40 yards that way, got it. And then my other friends who I hang out with, who are all within 100 yards of me, have all had it. So it's like most people I know have already had it. I can't say that it's herd immunity, but it's a lot of people.
Everything I've read is like they don't know.
Well, I mean, these are people who tested positive for it or tested positive for antibodies. So, I mean, they definitely had it.
Right.
And the thing is that I'm guessing you can't point to your neighbors right around where you live and say, like, almost everyone's had it.
Right. Can't.
Who knows for sure and was tested. That's the difference here. Like, a lot of people have had it. Like, almost everyone.
So the testing is widespread. Everyone that gets tested, is it quick?
Yeah, I mean, when I did the test, it was funny. I showed up at my neighbor's house for dinner, and they're having a Mexican night we had margaritas, and they held up 2 bags and I go, guess what I got here? And I said, I don't know. She goes, Corona tests. And one of the guests was a nurse and administered all the tests. And once we pricked our fingers and put it in the little thing, they handed it to us and they said, start your watch in 15 minutes, put up your hand and I'll come look at the thing and I'll see if there's another little line where there's supposed to be a line. So
it was
we all did it. We all drank margaritas and took Corona tests.
And that's how you found out you had it?
Yeah, that's how I found out I had antibodies.
I see.
I was quite sure I had it. I mean, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I had all the classic symptoms.
So do you feel good about traveling now since you had it? Would you get on a plane, no problem?
Yeah, I mean, so I had it right at the very beginning of this whole thing. And in Sweden, nothing shut down. All the bars, the restaurants, the shops have been open the whole time. Nobody's wearing masks ever, anywhere. So I've just been going out to dinners. You can finally get into the hard restaurants to get into.
So is it life as normal? I mean, or are they doing social distancing or physical distancing?
Yeah, so like some restaurants don't really quite do it. But most places, like if you sit down at a table, they'll put like an X over 2 out of the 4 seats. So, or when you go to a bar, like a really popular bar, there'll be this line out the door where people are supposed to socially distance. Because it's going down the sidewalk, no one's put those little stickers on the sidewalk. So everyone's standing a bit too close. And when you get in, they have fewer people they allow in. And they say, order a drink at the bar, but you can't mingle around with it. You have to go find a seat. But people are mingling around.
So when you guys are watching the news, I mean, by the way, do the Swedes watch the news in America? Are they watching CNN or Fox?
Oh, yeah.
And what are they thinking? Are they like...
Well, to get a full understanding, you really have to watch the Swedish version of Anthony Fauci. He's this super cool dude. And like, he'll say something like this. They'll say, why aren't you wearing masks? And he'll say, what studies have you looked at about masks? And they'll go, we don't know. Everyone just says you're supposed to wear them. And he'll say, well, here's the thing. The studies that I've seen show that if you're a trained medical personnel and you're wearing one new one every time and you know not to touch your face, these things can be really effective. But if you're Joe Schmo and you're scratching your thing, you're taking it off, taking it back on, using the same one 6 days in a row, it's not nearly as effective. And when it loses efficacy that much, at some point it's like, is it really worth it?
So people do not wear masks. So nowhere. I mean, if I did go there and I wore a mask, would people just look at me like I'm from Mars?
They'd go, that guy. Well, no, there's a few people that wear them, like mostly the Asian tourists. They think you're an Asian tourist. Well,
I mean,
or hypochondriac.
I've never been.
You wouldn't get laughed out of the city. They just think that guy's a little.
But there's not a lot of tourism going on right now in Sweden, correct?
Definitely less. I mean, this is true everywhere. But a lot of Brits, for example, came here for the freedom because we never had lockdown and everything's been open all the time. And what people do is they just hang out in the park more, but now the parks are crowded.
So do you think...
And here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing. So the death rate, so this is, a country that wears no masks, no gloves, everything's been open the whole time, and roughly 80% of the deaths occurred in old age homes in Stockholm when it just went rampant and just blitz through those things. And that's an admitted screw up by everybody. They just didn't have the protocols in place to be safe. But that's where about 80% of the deaths took place, were people who really didn't have more than, let's say, 2 to 6 months to live.
Wow.
So how awful is it for the general public? I mean, it was horrible for those people, obviously, and their families.
Right.
But I mean, it wasn't a shortening of life by that much. And if you remove that giant chunk of the population, Sweden's death rate is crazy low, like pretty on par with all the other Scandinavian countries, except we didn't do anything.
But didn't the other Scandinavian countries block you guys from going or prevent you guys?
Yeah, because they were looking at that high figure. And the other thing that's weird about that high figure is that the way Sweden counts is kind of weird. It's not like people who died because of COVID, they died with COVID. So if you got COVID and then you got hit by a car, that's a COVID death. That's how they count it here. So we had a high number for those two things.
I see.
It was unusually high. And people were just looking at that big number and dividing it by the population and saying, don't go there, it's a horrible place. But if you dig a little deeper, it's fine. And nobody's scared, really. And the people who are scared, who are a little elderly, they're all living out in the countryside in their summer homes or hiding out on some island in the archipelago.
Well, interesting.
You know?
So do you want to come to America this summer?
I'm not scared of it, but I mean, if I just don't want to get stuck in quarantine, that's the only thing I'm scared of. I mean, the death rate, I'm just checking the death rate as of today in Sweden, all of Sweden, it's like almost zero. I mean, it's zero today.
And what's the population of Sweden?
It's 10 million people. But we've had 0 to 5 deaths for the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Something like that. It's been almost nothing. And the graph went up in March and April and then dove.
So do the Swedes love Donald Trump? Because it sounds like...
This is what's crazy. We're sort of practicing what Donald Trump is advocating, only it's a more nuanced way of explaining it.
Right.
He's kind of saying like this. This is what this guy, the Tony Fauci of Sweden is saying. He's saying, look at the flu vaccine. It's not 100% effective. The chances we're going to have a COVID vaccine that's like 100% effective is pretty low. And you don't want to be among the first batch of people to be taking it either, because there have been vaccines that have come out and had a lot of horrible side effects. So you want to wait until it gets really widely tested for a while before you put that thing in your body. So he's like, we're going to have this for a while. Strengthen your immune systems. You know, it's like, get some sleep, don't drink so much booze, lose some weight, get out and exercise, keep your immune system strong. And if you feel that you're really highly susceptible to being dangerously hurt by this, go hide somewhere. You know, really, you be the one that takes protective cautions for your own self. Probably getting a weird echo, but anyway, that's how. And the rest of us, I mean, the chances, if you're not overweight by a lot, have pre-existing conditions, and you're like under 60, the chances of actually dying from COVID are crazy low. It's like the flu or the getting killed in a car accident or something. I mean, it's something you wouldn't be bothered about otherwise.
This is good to hear, and makes me feel like a lot less afraid to get on a plane. Have you gotten on a plane since you've had it?
I haven't, because there's nowhere else I want to go where I can be as free as here. Here's the other thing that this Swedish Fauci said that was kind of interesting. So someone said, what about your spiking cases? And he said, if our cases are going up and the deaths are going down, that's a good thing. It's like the common cold, something that everyone gets and no one gets killed by it. That's actually a good thing, right? It means it's less dangerous. So in the US, when they go, its cases are going up, here they'd say, well, are the deaths going down? I mean, because that's pretty relevant.
Right.
It's like we're on the other side of the looking glass here. So I look at what Trump says like this. I mean, not a Trump fan by any stretch, but he's kind of like a broken watch. A broken watch gets the time right twice a day. And he just kind of does it by accident.
That is true. But so do your friends feel like since they've already had it once, they won't get it again?
That's the current wisdom. And it's sort of like he was this Swedish Fauci guy.
The Fauci guy is going to take off just by you calling him Swedish Fauci, by the way.
Yeah. He should get a t-shirt, Swedish Fauci.
Yeah.
so Anders Tegnell is his name, and he was saying that it's kind of about as likely to last your immunity to this if you've had it as when you have the flu. So it'd like last you the season, but then you're susceptible to the next season.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm no medical doctor. I don't play one on TV, but it does make sense. I mean, they say it's going to stick around. Some people say it's going to stick around forever, like the flu. So I guess we need to get on with our lives and deal with it.
Like, lose some weight, don't drink so much, get out and train, do some yoga, boost your immunity. Drink some of those little ginger shots or whatever the hell.
I do love ginger shots. I get them at Trader Joe's, which you do not have there. But you have IKEA sweet meatballs. So, you know what? Since we've talked a lot about Sweden, I'm going to break this into 2 episodes. All right. We'll do the next one. But anything else on Sweden and the coronavirus and, and by the way, how do the Swedes in general view like Donald Trump and this administration? Are they afraid to come here? Or do they like them? They love them?
They're more likely. Before COVID, they were less likely to go to the U.S. I mean, Swedes in general really like the U.S. Their second home is like New York. But since Trump took over, people are sort of two minds about it. Some of them are saying, I have a conference there, I'm going to go anyway. If they have a really legitimate reason, like a family reunion or something, they'll go. But if they have to decide between a couple places, because of Trump, they're not going. So it's hurting tourism badly.
I mean, that's what I would think, but it's just, I'm just curious what.
Yeah, they do not. I mean, it's an ass clown. If I had to sum it up.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I do agree with you. I was hoping for him to do a much better job, but that was wishful thinking.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to break this. I'm going to stop it, and we'll redo another one, and we'll do the one on 39 questions. We won't even talk about this. We'll just refer people back to here.
Perfect.
All right, here we go. I'm going to stop it.